So how you compile, do you compile notes specifically for that, or relied on something else, or only newspapers are the savior for you?
Sir, I was actually very scared of the preliminary stage this time. So I was intent upon doing everything I could. I made a list of 100 such indices. And similarly, I made a list of 200 say, government initiatives in such a manner, and I kept on revising them 4 or 5 times. The same went on for space missions of different countries and all those, suppose 50 missions. I remembered all the national parks, biosphere reserves, everything, all UNESCO sites in India, all those, and kept on linking with each other, which of them is present in one list and not the other, and such manner. So I made extensive notes. I did not rely on books per se. I just converted it to my language often.
I think this is a wonderful way to memorize the thing in a very short span of time if you're preparing your own notes. Apart from this, because you are working with some bank, and are you really working during preparation days, or you took leave? I just want to know this thing.
I was actually undergoing my training at the Reserve Bank of India, so I could not get any leaves. I joined 2 months before the mains examination. I cleared without a job, and then before mains, I joined the training.
Coming to the second part, Darpan, I want to ask about the newspaper. Many aspirants give this information that they read 2 newspaper. What was your strategy, Darpan and Shubhamji, also yours, on newspaper? How important newspapers are for a civil services aspirant?
So newspapers form the foundation of each and every individual's knowledge, and they are important not just for UPSC aspirants, but otherwise also. However, that said, I would like to add a caveat over here. So some of the candidates whom I've met previously, they say that they have dedicated around 2 to 3 hours also per day to a newspaper. That is just that, then that way you should just jettison the newspaper and not read it at all if you're spending that much of time. Because at the end of the day, you have to see the cost benefit analysis. You have to fetch each and every mark. It matters whether you come into the list, service, cadre, and everything. So I would say that one should spend around 45 minutes onto the newspaper and current affairs. And then adding on to the newspaper and the current affairs would be Government of India websites like PIB. So that was my approach to the newspaper, and reading only what is relevant to UPSC syllabus.
That is a very smart approach, Darpan, I must say, because devoting 3 hours on newspaper, that means you are losing out some other aspects, which is going to cost you in the examination.
So I really think in this UPSC journey, my stress buster, my best friend has been the Atlas only. So every day before sleeping, I used to devote around 10 to 15 minutes to the Atlas. So I was well versed with, say, each and every continent. I used to revise, say, 1 week to Africa. I've given 1 week to North America. And then if something pops up in the newspaper, then I go back to my map and then I revise it again. So that's the way one should be best friends with the Atlas, because what is happening is that these days map questions are increasing, and they're really, if you really mark them, it can really take your marks really high. And so I think Atlas every day 10 to 15 minutes is welcome.
I think it's a very welcome step to the aspirants who are listening, that giving certain time to the Atlas, even at the time when you're about to lay down on the bed, like 10 to 15 minutes you can spare for Atlas, and it will give you, I think, 10 to 15 additional marks. So what do you think, Shubhamji, about the Atlas, the role it played in the geography, especially the questions which are appearing on a regular basis about the maps?
Sir, I was not very good with the map work, but I certainly devoted some time to Atlas, especially before the prelims. Additionally, I also reverse engineered this. In a way, I visited several coaching websites, as all people do, online initiatives, etc., to do daily MCQs, and whatever locations were appearing in them, I made a note out of it in my OneNote. So by the time prelims approached, I had a handy list of 50-60 locations with me, especially in West Asia and Southeast Asia. So sometimes some locations were repeated in the paper, sometimes not, but they gave me a fair idea of the situation.
Coming to the marathon of the UPSC, that is the mains, which actually I think which is responsible for your 80% of your selection. Depends upon how you perform in the mains. And paper one, I think it is very large. It is very elaborative, because it is containing art and culture, history, and geography, world geography, Indian geography, and a lot of social issues. And geography is also these days clubbed with the environmental, flavor, like questions on mangrove depletion. How do you manage to, devote time for a paper which is asking too much, but allotting you only 250 marks?
So in this regard, I would say that the thing which helped me, especially for GS1, is that I had a funda, which I like to call the rule of 1/10. So say I'm reading a history book, which is of 200 pages. I'll try to make notes which are only 20 pages long. That is 1/10. And then during the second, third, fourth revision, I'll come down to just 2. So one day before the exam, I did not have any stress because I knew I just have to read those 2 pages, which just had the points and the liners, which I will use directly in the exam. So I think that helped me to sail through. Other than that, of course, the basic textbooks remain the same.
I think it's a wonderful rule that you shared with the students, rule of 1/10, and then proportionally 1/2, 1/2 half. What is the strategy that worked for you in this paper one, Shubhamji?
Sir, I fully agree with Darpan's strategy. I approached it in a similar manner. For example, word history notes were only 3 or 4 pages long by the end. So what I did is I did not focus way too much on the static concepts from which not many questions would appear. So I only wrote down those things which I could remember. For example, in a question on labor movement or peasant movement in modern history, I only had 1 or 2 paras with me which I could replicate easily anywhere along with other things. So I tried to make short and crisp notes for multiple revision, tens of revisions before mains.